Now, there was a legend that had been propagated since the 12th century of a lost kingdom of Christians somewhere in the east, ruled by a mighty and wealthy king called Prester John, supposedly a descendant of one of the three magi who visited the newborn Christ in Bethlehem 1,000 years before. This kingdom was thought originally to be located in India, what little the West knew about it at the time, based largely on apocryphal stories about the disciple Thomas founding a Christian enclave there. Indeed, as the Crusader presence in the Holy Land began to crumble under the onslaught of Islamic expansion, stories circulated of King Prester John sending word that he was on his way with a mighty army to relieve the besieged Crusaders and help once again liberate Jerusalem for Christ. As we know, this relief force never materialized, yet stories continued to circulate for decades that he had nevertheless liberated Persia and was now on his way to take Baghdad. Muslim armies were indeed being crushed by a mighty king, but it was not the Christian Prester John, but rather Genghis Khan who was now the scourge of the Islamic world. How did he get confused with Prester John? Well, it turns out that when our old mate Genghis was a vulnerable teenager, he had at one time been under the care of a foster father who just happened to be a Nestorian Christian Khan of the Karaite clan. The Karaites were a Turkic Central Asian tribe who had adopted Christianity in the 11th century. Nestorians were a heretical sect who believed in the dual nature of Christ, that is to say, they claimed he had both a human and a divine nature, which established church doctrine dismissed in favour of a single, unified nature. Despite their condemnation, the church was hardly in a position to police the Mongol steppes, and so the sect flourished there for some time. Anyway, the Khan had promised his niece as a bride to the young Temujin, who in time would go on to become the Genghis Khan we all know and love. But the two eventually fell out, and the Khan reneged on his promise to present said bride to the expectant groom-to-be. Bad mistake. Within a couple of years, the intractable Christian Khan was singing soprano with the angels, and Genghis got his new missus after all. Somehow, these tales of a Christian Khan morphed into various confusing and unrelated stories woven by crusading knights in the Levant, with the legend of a mighty Christian Khan in the east gaining ever more traction. When it became obvious that the dread Mongol Khan was anything but Christian, rumours about the location of this exotic Prester John kingdom began to shift from Central Asia towards Saharan Africa instead, with various contenders such as Abyssinia and Ethiopia being considered as candidate homelands. At the time, these domains were thought to extend right across Saharan Africa, and given the onslaught of Islamic expansion throughout the Mediterranean, southern European states in the firing line became ever more desperate to link up with this Christian king, sending spies and envoys into North Africa, hoping to make contact. Portugal was among the most active of these, and it seems that Henry the Navigator developed a particular obsession with the fantasy.